Welcome to Boss Bitch Radio. Yet again, we have a compilation of all of the best of After Dark episodes. Now, if you are newer here to Boss Bitch Radio, welcome. And I also want to give you a little bit of a warning. After Dark is essentially the devil side of me that sits on one side that likes to talk about really dirty, nasty, and controversial topics that are likely not celebrated often. Well, I guess it depends on what community you hang out in. I felt it was important to start discussing topics related to sexuality, sensuality, alternative types of relationships, and things that were maybe created some fear for women because they didn't quite understand it. And not that I'm an expert, but I was dabbling in some things and have worked with certain coaches and people to just expand my perspective. And I'm just a curious person by nature, very curious. I love to ask questions and find out more about why people do things and why they do what they do. And then I try to understand it and then disseminate it and bring it to you guys as best as I can. So I highly recommend that you are listening to this with headphones on. It is not safe for work. It is not safe for little ears. And if you are a child of mine, you should also not be listening. Okay, full disclaimer there. So let's go ahead and dive in. These episodes were probably some of my favorite episodes to date on the podcast because this is a side of me that is not displayed publicly. Well, now it is. And it's something that I feel is important for women to tap into. And it doesn't necessarily mean all the things that I'm going to talk about today, but a side of their sensuality and getting comfortable with it is something I see women struggle with. And I wanted to continue to have conversations around that. So the first episode out of 5 that I'm going to share with you today in terms of the best of, with the best snippets of that episode, is the Bitch's Guide to Getting Started with Non-Monogamy. Yes, non-monogamy. It's episode number 148. Now, if you've been following me over on the gram or you've been following the Boss Bitch Radio podcast for any amount of time, you know that I am currently in a monogamous relationship and I have a boyfriend and everything is fantastic and I'm enjoying every aspect of that. And also, there was a point in my time not so long ago where I was very curious about non-monogamy. And I started working with John Romanello, which his episode we'll talk about towards the end, and just getting curious about that and exploring that and learning about polyamory and what necessarily I wanted to work for me and designing a relationship that made sense for me. And I will say that this all spawned off of an accidentally on purpose New Year's party, that'll be almost a year here, that a friend and I had gone to. And prior to that, I was already essentially dabbling a little bit in non-monogamy without realizing, or solo poly, I guess. And then this was sort of the tipping point for me, was this New Year's Eve party that we went to. We didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. And it opened a door for lots of exploration, lots of learning, and connecting with people across the US that I never imagined possible through the podcast, now sharing my stories, and also people in the same space. Okay, so the first episode is it's myself, and I'm talking about my personal experiences with monogamy and fidelity, also relationships and sexual desires. I go into that. Safe sex practices and open communication when you're dating and you're doing the non-monogamous lifestyle. And then I also talk a lot about this first experience in which I'm referencing, which was the swingers party experience, which was like a hotel takeover. And then how the experience allowed me to step into my feminine. Okay. Like, I know you're probably like, what? You're feminine. Yeah. It's a feminine energy. So enjoy this episode and you know what to do. The reason why this is a thing for me. It's a thing. It's a definitely how I plan on navigating myself in romantic relationships for the rest of my life. Can't say for certain, nothing's ever certain, but I'm pretty damn sure. Okay. For those of you that haven't dove into my beginning podcast, which if you do, I don't want to know because they're probably super cringy.
But I do share my experiences as far as my marriage goes. And I went into that very, very extensively in previous podcasts. But I have been historically, most of my adult life, I would attribute to being monogamous. I was married for 10 years. I've had 3 children. All of my relationships have been serious monogamous relationships. As an adult, they've definitely been, one-on-one monogamous. And there's always been issues in my experience with fidelity, myself being the offender and also my partners being the offenders. And that's always seemed to be a reoccurring theme in my relationships. I know what some of that attributed to from my partners because we've had discussions and things like that. But for myself, speaking for myself personally, something that I realized was I would be in love with somebody and we would be, obviously the default is monogamous, right? You start off, you start dating or exclusive, you go down that whole path or the relationship escalator, as they call it in a lot of these relationship books. And you start to notice things that maybe you're not, that don't fulfill you in the relationship where, like, okay, that thing could potentially bother me down the road, but like, he's a great guy. He's got a million other great qualities. Like, we'll let it slide. That's how we tend to, find who our people are in our person. And then as a relationship progresses, and this is again my experience that, sometimes there's a mismatch of sexual desire and intimacy, time spent together, lots of little intricacies, and not to mention, at some point you realize when you are with this person for an extended period of time that maybe sometimes you're tired of fucking this person. Okay. That I was trying to come up with a fancy way and like kind of beat around the bush to like say that, but that's the hard and fast truth. Like, you can't be expected to be put in a situation where there are other people, other humans of the opposite sex or the same sex, if that's also your interest, and not have some kind of physical attraction or chemistry, and think about potentially exploring that, right? Like, that comes up. I find that that's a common theme. I've worked with women for 16 years at this point, and I'd be hard pressed to find a woman. I can think of a couple off the top of my head in this many years that I've bonded with, training in person, that are like head over heels in love with their husband, have no desire to be with anyone else. It's usually not the case. And I think that that's normal. And so part of my self-discovery, like after my divorce, was I don't feel to the depths of my soul that we should rely on one person to help fulfill all the needs. I don't think that that's realistic for one person to be held to that standard. And in tandem with that, I have found myself in multiple situations in my adult life, in relationships, and where I was being infidelitous, that I very much indeed loved 2 people at the same time. And it was a highly conflicting feeling when you're like, how the fuck am I married and I love this man and this and this and that, we've gone through all these things together. And then I have this affair and I love that man too, right? It's not widely accepted in our society, but it was my truth. And that's all I knew. It was like, that was my truth. And it just felt very, very unfair. It's like if you were like, well, I can't have more than 1 kid because I only have enough love for 1. It's just not possible for 2. That's not right. That's weird. I can only love 1 more than the other. So that's how my brain wraps around how non-monogamy is not for me. So for me, I'm kind of like, I've been doing it, but I'm like coming out about it, I guess, if you will. And as I'm going through this reinvention, right, which we talked about that on a couple episodes back, and it was on purpose because I'm feeling very passionate about this, and I don't want other people to feel like they have to be embarrassed about their choices or their sexual orientation or their preferences, because life's too fucking short, and love who you want to love as many people as you want to fucking love. And who the fuck's business is it anyways? Right. So I'm just being brave over here. So as I'm going through this, like talking about it on a very public platform, right? Like we have a good amount of podcast listeners, So it's sharing very openly with all of you, even though I'm recording here in this room by myself, and I feel like nobody's gonna really know after I after I upload this. But y'all come and knocking on my DMs, and I love you for that. But I want to share the experience with you because it's going to be. So I talk with John Romanello every 2 weeks, and I talked about him in previous episodes, and I'll also mention him later on. But I told him I feel like I'm in a bumper car, and I'm just like, oh fuck, whoops, I shouldn't have hit that one. That one I hit a little too hard, right? And I'm kind of like bumping around. I'm like a newborn baby with like trying to navigate and tell partners that I'm meeting with and play partners and potential boyfriends, and so it's a process and. Part of that is sharing this with you and learning together. So, with being married, both of us being infidelitous, I've also been divorced for 10 years. I've had a few serious relationships before where they've been monogamous and, they're over a year and a half. I on and off again relationship for a few years. And I know that again, through those relationships, there were always periods of like unhappiness, unrest, agitation with knowing that I didn't feel like this was my person 100%. And I loved a lot of their qualities, but I also wanted to explore other options. And it sort of felt stifling in my experience. So with that, knowing like just feeling there was always something missing or lacking. And let me just tell you, I am not perfect either. Okay. So it wasn't like I'm coming to the table like some majestical unicorn. Like it would have been advantageous for them to also explore other relationships or us just having a non-monogamous relationship with us having each other as home base because I have my own faults. Okay. There was always this guilt that came with that experience for me, like having an attraction or desire for someone else, either physically, mentally, emotionally. I would always have this guilt around it. And I just knew as I've been traveling through this being single, not in a serious monogamous relationship, that I just didn't want to do that anymore. So for the past year, I've been dating casually. And what I mean by casually, by my definition, is friends with benefits type of situations or casual hookups or lovers that we knew weren't going to go anywhere other than just sexual. And like we'd have intimate conversations and things like that. So I've had plenty of those experiences over the last year, but they were very much to the point where there was nobody that the intimacy was growing so deep that we were sharing conversations about other relationships or like, hey, are you seeing anyone else? Are you just seeing me? It was very much an understood, unspoken, like we're just hooking up. It's fun. And like, don't ask, don't tell. We would have conversations around sexual health. And we would also, with some of my partners, exchange our lab results. And at first I remember somebody asking for me, and this is just like a side note. And I was like, oh, the audacity, right? This was a couple years back, but I've come to find that that's a great default and it works for me. And I prefer to lead with that just in full transparency. So people know, like I take my sexual health very seriously and it's important for me. And I get my labs done. If we're planning on hooking up this weekend, I prefer that we don't hook up with any new partners and we have our labs done at least a week before. And that sounds like super technical and like it would kill the vibe, but we're all the fucking adults here. And like, I'm not trying to get some Gombu virus that I cannot fuck anymore with. Okay. So it's important for me to make sure that things are safe. So I went to a swingers party and that changed everything for me. Okay. Changed everything. So the swingers party, I believe I've alluded to it on, I don't know, probably some of the other After Dark episodes, but it was a hotel takeover. And what that means is the entire hotel was taken over for, I believe it was 3 days. And everybody that was at the hotel was a part of this swingers event. Now, mind you, I was terrified. I went with a friend and we were both terrified because we didn't know what the fuck we were getting ourselves into, right? Because and again, being honest with you guys, to this point at this party, had never been in a threesome. I've never been in a group sex experience. I've never had sex in public. So here we are at this fucking swingers party. Let's fucking go, bitches. And I'm just like, okay, well, worst case, best case, we're just going to like watch. That was our thing. Like, we're just going to like spectate. Okay. And that for me, if I left that whole weekend and just with the experience and like seeing all the things going on would have been enough for me to be like, great time, like enjoyed myself, maybe not for me all the time, but cool group of people. The second that my heel hit the inside the hotel, like corridor for the first event of the weekend, I looked around at the people around me and all I saw were the most pleasant, happy, body-free, all shapes, all sizes, all ages, half naked, fully dressed, full suits, butt plugs, pasties, nude with a collar, like an eclectic array of amazing things that I have never experienced in my entire life. And I felt for the very first time at home. And I don't know, like it makes me emotional. And I know that sounds absolutely batshit crazy, but I forever have felt like there's just something that I'm not clicking with just in my like social sphere and like, friend groups. And I just felt like I've always just been different. And I've felt that since high school, and I know that that's likely a me thing. And I'm, going to work through that in therapy. But it was the first time I just felt like I was just with like-minded people and people who I felt would understand me and I could relate to, and I could watch in their own experiences and not have judgment towards them and appreciate that they were likely doing the same for me. I'm just a very physical, sexual, like sensual person. And I blame the pole dancing. Like it tapped into like a part of my femininity that I never want to relinquish. And stepping back into dating and, kind of like hooking up with guys and being more confident and assertive and asking for what I want and going to these like swingers parties and sex parties and play parties has allowed me to really step into my feminine and just embrace it and have that piece of me that I miss so very much from the sensual dance part of my life.
Okay, the next episode in this series is a juicy interview with Mike Jarrett. Now, you may be wondering who Mike Jarrett is, or maybe you may know him because I know that he has a lot of friends that came over to Boss Bitch Radio and started listening after our interview. Now, he was one of my very first play partners in my non-monogamy journey. I met him at this hotel takeover in San Diego for New Year's. And the episode is titled After Dark, of course, Swingers, Open Relationships, and Sex Parties with Mike Jarrett. Now, that is episode number 154. And we talked about how his wife, McKinley, wonderful woman. I met her. I've hung out with her a couple times in this journey, how they got started in the swingers lifestyle. Okay. Now, if you're newish to these terms and verbiage, swinger is a term that is used as a lifestyle for people who practice a form of non-monogamy, which sometimes the swingers lifestyle can look very different. It depends. There are different constructs that you can be in with your partner. And this is something that you essentially will decide with your partner, but it does involve bringing in a third party, sometimes a fourth party, sometimes swapping partners, sometimes a more milder approach, which is maybe having sex in the same room as another couple, but there is no touching. And then there's so many possibilities. Okay. There's like soft swap and just all the things. If you're interested, you just got to go down the rabbit hole. Okay. I have provided you some things to jump off from here, but we talk about jealousy, self-esteem, and how that relates to an open or non-monogamous relationship. He talks about pills that men use to get an erection, aka dick pills. Those are his words. And hooking up with couples versus playing separately, what that looks like, and the concept of taking one for the team. If you want to know all that, continue listening, my friend, and enjoy.
You met my wife too. Like,
yes, McKinley's awesome.
The two of us have been doing stuff like this for pretty much our whole relationship. So a little over 8 years. I mean, it didn't start off that way. Like, it was maybe like a year in.
Yes.
There was never any like, it's not like we got together and we're like, we need to be swingers. Like, that lifestyle's for us. Like,
right.
She's 10 years younger than me. And when we started dating, she was just constantly like floating the idea of hooking up with other women, which to me seemed like a trap, because all of my like 20 something relationships were like very crazy, I guess is the word. Just like I wasn't allowed to have female friends, especially, but I wasn't really allowed to have guy friends because they didn't trust my male friends. And,
yes.
And so I just was like kind of mentally damaged from these like abusive relationships I was in my 20s. So when my new significantly younger girlfriend is like, we should do this. And I'm like,
is this a trap?
Yeah, fire alarms going off. And I even like bounced it off some buddies. I'm like, I'm going to do this, but I'm not sure it's a great idea. And they were like, well, it's probably not, but what are you going to say? No.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck no. And so it just kind of started there. I mean, I guess that's probably a lot of swinger couples origin stories, is that they like started to hook up with other women.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody, but that's probably like the bulk.
I feel like that's like the intro to a lot of it. It's like, let's have a threesome. And like, that's at least the stories that I'm hearing, obviously not everybody, but when you started that with her, was she playing with men as well? Or were you just like strictly, you guys played together?
Yeah. When we started, she was pretty much just like in this, she just wanted to fuck women.
Yeah. Yeah.
All the time. And I, being the sick fuck that I am, I was like, yeah, of course. Like,
okay.
And I believe there was a discussion early on about guys. And I was like, well, I mean, if you really want to, we can. I was like, but I'm not sure like that's exactly what the vibe is here, because you're playing with the women. Mm-hmm. I'm not playing with the guys. And she was like, yeah, you're right. So it never actually came up for about 5 years.
During that time, like when you were connecting with women, because sometimes I have friends, and like we're obviously talking about this a lot right now in like my friend groups and things, because they're just like, how is this working for you? And I'm like, I'm figuring it out right now. But some of them are also expressing that their significant others are concerned that even if they play with females, that they're going to develop relationships with females, and then that presents an issue. Did you have any of that in the beginning?
No, to be honest with you, like I've kind of always been pretty laissez-faire with that, right? Like my long-term high school girlfriend, the girl I dated right after high school for 6 years, she left me for a buddy. It was horrible at the time, but it's definitely the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. And I've sort of developed a mentality after that like, if somebody's gonna fucking leave you, they're gonna leave you. Like, you're not opening up a situation for it. Like, no, having sex with a lot of people isn't gonna make your girl or boy leave you. It's just a situation, right? And that same situation can happen every day when they stop at a supermarket or they stop to get gas or they go to a bar or anything, right? Like, any type of connection can cause a rift. So like, I kind of just look at everything like, whatever, if it happens, it happens. And I don't know, you just can't go into situations ultra worried. You can't go into situations with jealousy on your back. Like, all of those things are recipes for disaster, right? Like, I'm not like some big believer in The Secret, but like, if you really do have bad vibes all the time, then bad shit's going to happen to you, right? Like, you get back what you put in.
Right.
And so if you go into situations thinking someone's going to fall in love with someone else, they're going to fucking do it, because you are going to project an air of really, really low self-esteem.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that. My coach that I'm working with through a lot of this, like, E&M, poly, open relationship stuff, said the same thing to me. He's like, if you keep stressing on these certain things, it's like you're just attracting them into, into your life.
Yep.
So when McKinley was like, okay, you had mentioned your experience with her shifting into, obviously adding men into the mix. Did she come to you? Was this a discussion? Did this happen accidentally? Like, I'm so curious as to the timeline of all these things.
I'll give you like the elevator pitch of how like the 5 years went by. For the first year, everything was great. She was super into women. We went from hooking up with one woman to 5 women, like very quickly. Like, it became like group sex
Oh,
all
got
the
you.
time.
Okay.
We just happened to have this
all
group
at
of, like
once.
college-aged women that were always down to hang out, and we were having these parties at the casino, and everybody. It was every weekend, and sometime around the beginning of 2017, we changed her birth control to the implant in her arm, and all that did was like ruin our lives. It killed her sex drive completely. It just fucked up everything, and it took about a year until she got it removed. The doctor wanted her to let it normalize, and eventually things would fix themselves. And some of the problems did, but the sex drive never came back. And she wasn't going to stop what we were doing. We were still doing it. She just wasn't super into it, right? Like she was having fun, but not being overly turned on by it or anything. So then she had it removed. She went off birth control for a while. We tried a bunch of stuff to regulate her sex drive, and none of it seemed to work. And then I had gone on testosterone replacement sometime in early 2019 or maybe late 2018. And my doctor said to me, like, hey, we do this for women all the time. Like anything can fuck up your hormones. And clearly the arm implant did.
Yeah.
So he tested her, and she was like as low as a woman can be with testosterone. So near the end of 2019, he had put her on a very low female replacement dose of testosterone. We had tried at the end. There was some point in this where she said to me, like, well, I want to start fucking guys. And I was like, okay, great. So we were trying to do it as a couple, and we weren't like part of any particular lifestyle group or anything. So it was just really us trying to hook up with our friends.
Oh.
And it was just like a disaster after disaster.
Okay, can we stop there? Because like girls need details. Give us like what's disasters? Just like broad, scenarios.
What I mean by disaster is no boners.
Okay, so this is a thing. This happens. I haven't had this experience, but say more. Like you just get in a room with a guy and like dicks aren't working.
Here's the thing. When you're in the lifestyle, it's sort of I don't even know if unspoken rule is the thing. It's a spoken rule. Like everybody just uses dick pills.
Yes,
like
you did tell me this. It's a lifestyle
seatbelt. It's a lifestyle seatbelt. Like you may not need it, but you might as well take it, because if you do, you don't want to be the one in the room having the problems, right? You put on your seatbelt when you drive, not because you're particularly worried about hitting somebody, but you're more worried about somebody hitting you.
Okay. I like this analogy.
Right. And when you're just hooking up with your buddies, like they're not thinking like that. They're like, oh, I've never had a problem with this. And
right. And this is hot.
And it is also a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like you end up having a little bit of an issue, and then everybody knows you have an issue, and then there's no fixing the issue. And so for us, it was kind of, at first it was funny. Right. It happened a couple times. And the worst part is like, I'm over there going nuts on some chick, and he's over here.
You don't have to mince words. Yes.
Yeah. Right. Like but I don't have a problem. So McKinley's over there like comforting a guy, and I'm over there like just
railing a girl.
My thing.
Right.
Yeah. And this happened once, this happened twice, it happened a third time. And sometime in mid to late January or February of 2020 is when her testosterone really started to kick in, and she was like ridiculously horny. So she was starting to get on to swinger apps to meet people, and it wasn't like it was going fine, and then everything shut down. So while she's like raging hormonally, I'm like, we're not hanging out with anybody. And so from like March until July of 2020, we were just talking about doing things, talking to people, a lot of sexting, but just not meeting up with anybody. And it wasn't until we went to San Diego in the middle of July, and we ended up going to Black's Beach, and we met up with this couple. We met on 3Fun. I believe you had met them at the New Year's event. And we had our actual first successful swap with them, where it was like, oh, this can happen. And very shortly after that, we went to a party up in Phoenix, and it happened again. She latched onto one guy. The one guy never got hard, and she took it like ultra personally. And she was a total wreck on our way home. And I was the one that proposed to her at that moment. Like, the whole issue here seems to be that we're trying to do stuff in groups or even just swapping. I was like, maybe we should just start doing stuff separately. Like, I'm the one in the room that's causing these guys to have a problem, probably.
Yeah.
So maybe we should just start doing stuff separately. And she was like super okay with it. And the next day I drove her back up to Phoenix, dropped her off at a guy's house, and she had this great time. And so like that kind of is our story of how we very quickly went from trying to hook up with couples to just playing separately.
Playing separately. So you're married, but you play separately. Like you don't play in the same room.
No,
You don't do orgies.
It's not that. Well, no, we throw monthly parties at our house.
Yes,
but at this point in time, we hadn't had very many successful swaps. We had one in San Diego, and we've gone back to visit them many times. We've traveled with them endlessly. Now they're like some of our best lifestyle friends, but like we don't spend a lot of time locally trying to meet up with couples. For us, the concept of hanging out with couples is like this extremely stressful situation where all four of us have to line up our schedules, our interest levels. Like you really hope that each person is into the other person as much, or someone ends up taking one for the team. And I say that with experience because both myself and my wife have taken one for the team in a few different situations.
Yes. So can you elaborate on that? Because I know what you mean, but I don't think some of our people will know what you mean by that.
So, you know, you meet a couple on an app, they've got some photos. I'm like, oh, this chick is really, really hot. And McKinley's like, yeah, the guy's fine. Then we meet them in person and like the dude's not particularly fine, or the girl's not as good looking as she said, and forget looks, like they could both be stunners, and you start chatting with them at dinner and you have nothing in common.
Yeah.
But like you're kind of almost pot committed at this point. Like they may be at our house or dinner may have happened. Like a lot of things can happen that can ruin the night, even when you're one-on-one. So if you like multiply that by 2, there's a lot of there's a lot of moving parts. And so swapping is not our favorite thing to do. And we still do it every once in a while. We'll meet a couple that's new to the lifestyle or their friends and they want to try, and we'll do it. Like we're pretty well seasoned at this point that we can like not have a bad time.
Yeah.
But early on it was tough and we didn't want to do it. It just wasn't for us. And throwing parties was the easy answer to this because at a party, right? Like if there's 20, 30, 40 people, like, and I try to tell this to new lifestyle people when they say like, oh, a party is like way too daunting for us. Like we'd rather start small. And I'm like, here's the truth. Starting small will leave you in a lot more pain because you are false expectations and just a lot of pressure. Whereas when you're at a party, you don't have to do anything. Like you can show up, you can vibe, you can have a drink, you can play games, you can fuck, you can do nothing. You can meet one person, you can meet 10 people. And there really is no pressure. People might hit on you, but no, thank you.
Right.
When you're at 2-on-2, like
you're in a situation.
If he's feeling it and she's not, does she say something or does she do it and then resent him later? Like there's just I don't know. There's a lot of feelings that go into all of this, even at a party or even with one-on-one or play separate, play together. But I feel like parties are the best situation because you don't have to do anything. You can vibe with nobody.
The next 2 episodes were really fun because I got to interview and actually kind of like co-host the podcast with one of my best friends who actually happens to be a therapist as well. And she deals with a lot of women's issues and, you know, couples therapy and things like that. She has some experience with Crystal Barrera. And this first episode, we got so much feedback for. In person, you know, when I'd see clients at the studio, it's episode number 130, and it's called From Prude to Kinky. Have you tried these things? And that is with Crystal Barrera. So I'm going to give you just a smattering of what we talked about, which was anal sex, giving and receiving oral, playing with toys, biting, being blindfolded, bathing together, bondage, and everything in between. We went through a list that you can download from Sex with Emily, and it's called the Yes, No, Maybe list. And there are many lists like this out there, but we just used hers because it was a fun one and very well put together. And we just went down the list and we discussed the things that we have tried, the things that we haven't, kind of our thoughts about it and opinions. And it was just a really fun, like girlfriendy chat conversation. So dive in and be prepared for some naughty talk. So we're going to dive in. It starts alphabetically. So it's the first one is anal sex. And so I'm just going to kind of bulk these, like bear with me. Maybe we lost you already, but just keep an open mind, friends. Okay. I'm going to bulk these all. So anal sex, anal rimming. Okay. We're going to talk about giving and receiving, and then anal toys, giving and receiving. So we kind of have mixed feelings. Like we don't obviously have the same interests, but we have a lot of the same. Go ahead and give me your take on that, on all the anal play.
So I feel like a lot of the anal play for me is a no or a maybe.
Okay.
Only because, of course, I've tried some things and some things are not enjoyable to me. Of course, there's many different factors, right, on what you're working with. And I also think that for me, just because of like my whole issue with like being in control, out of control,
Mhm.
I have to feel super safe with the person.
Mhm.
And that's not something that's going to be built off 2 interactions, 3 interactions, 4 interactions. So these type of anal kind of plays are usually things that happen in more long-term situations if they happen.
Mhm.
But I'm usually like, no to the anal sex for me. Anal rimming, giving and receiving, I'm okay with that.
And rimming, for those that are like, what is that? Basically eating ass or
Yeah.
having your ass eaten. Like, let's just be real. This is just girlfriend talk here, okay?
And let's be honest, we know that the male G-spot is in the anus.
Yes, it is. That good old prostate play.
So if you get a partner that is open-minded and allows you to try this, I guarantee you he will lose his mind.
Yeah. Okay. Is that all you have to say about that?
Yeah. And the anal toys, I'm a hard no.
Okay. So I'm a little different with this. So I am there with you on anal sex being, for me, is the one boundary that I will save for intimate relationships. You've done it, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so I have done it several times with long-term partners,
Correct.
like people I've been dating for years. I've done it once with somebody who I was not, but I was like
comfortable.
I was catching feelings for very steadfastly, and I was like,
no, you
okay.
had feelings.
Yeah, I did. Sorry, trying to deny that. And that was actually the one thing that made me decide I couldn't see him anymore unless he wanted to actually date me. Literally.
Correct.
I was like, I just gave you my butthole. Like,
Yeah.
you need to date me outside the bedroom, I feel like now. And that was like, that's not what he was into. So I don't see him anymore.
So, but the times that I have engaged in this were not enjoyable for me.
It's a challenge. So I'm going to give you guys some tips about the tip, okay? I follow John Romanello. I've talked about him. I'll probably talk about him often on these podcasts because I feel like he kind of opened the door for me to really get down on my freaky side with reading some of his stuff. But he does have in the highlights on his Instagram, so I'll link him up in the show notes. He has an anal training, like whole highlights on IG. And so I have done that as of recent, not because I'm trying to have anal sex with any of my partners, but I do like anal toys and being inserted into my rectum, and that can be very uncomfortable. And so there's a process. There's a process. If I know this current person I'm playing with wants to do that every single time, he wants to stick something in my butthole. Like,
oh my
listen,
God.
buddy. Okay, sometimes I gotta be ready.
I cannot.
Lots of lube. And you have to, for me personally, I have to orgasm first.
To loosen it up.
Yes, either through oral or penetration.
To relax.
To relax everything. And then I'm like pretty much ready for that. But let me just explain. You have never put a butt plug in your asshole?
I just cannot even fathom the idea because
just get a tiny one.
It does not even seem remotely pleasurable.
So let me tell you why I enjoy it. Okay. First of all, it's one of these perceived naughty things. So that's like the whole like, ooh, I'm being like naughty, right? Like it's not fucking naughty, but whatever. So
but you kind of are.
Yes. So I put this cute little diamond butt plug in my butt, and
I was with you when you bought it.
Yes, you were. I was like, oh God, I don't know if we can do this. And you're like, just get it. I'm like, okay. And it was a great decision because when you have that in and you go to have sex, the sensation is completely different because it puts pressure on their penis and or their fingers or whatever. So it creates a different sensation and it is outer worldly.
I can see how that, just anatomically would be good, because it
presses up against, the walls are very thin that separate the vagina and the rectum.
Which would be stimulating your clitoral senses your nerves from internally.
Yeah, I mean, you get a little more pressure on the G-spot. Yeah. And then, just depending on the position, it feels fucking phenomenal. So, and I am a huge, one of my favorite things is to give a man a rim job. Is to just eat their ass. That's my favorite.
Correct.
But I also have to disclose
I learned it from you.
Yeah. I'm trying to convince all my friends to eat more ass. It's fucking great.
Well, they love it too.
You have to really, sometimes it's just depends on the person, I think too, sometimes.
They have to be really open sexually as well.
Yeah, that's definitely
and they have to know their G-spots in their anus.
Yeah, and I don't even get that far. It's more of just like the whole act of just butthole, just the butt. Just the tongue.
You're prepared to die in some cheeks.
I definitely suffocate more often than not.
I mean, I'm not opposed.
So I highly suggest that you keep an open mind about that. Yeah. Because it is so fucking hot. It's just hot. I'm just saying.
But then you also...
but poop comes out of there. Well, it's not coming out of there.
At that moment.
Although I did see a fucking funny meme about a girl saying that she was eating a guy's butthole and he was hella relaxed and he farted in her mouth.
And she said it tasted metallic.
Did you send that
yes.
to me? Oh my God. Okay.
But I was going to say something though. The other thing I think that I like about it that I recently have come to terms with is it puts him in a little bit more of a submissive position.
That's fucking hella why I love that shit. I'm like,
so
yeah,
he has
baby.
to trust you enough to do that. And that's
like,
kind of hot.
Yeah, baby, I'm eating your asshole. How you like it? That's how I kind of am in my head too.
Yeah.
And I get all fucking crazy.
You're a little more aggressive than me about it.
I like snarl and snort, I think, when I'm back there.
Yeah, I understand that.
Rub my face all up in it. But anyways, I'm getting a little excited. Okay. Next, biting. How do you feel about that?
I'm game for that.
We're going down the list, FYI. So biting, I like biting.
Me too. But how about the next one says blindfold? How about blindfolded and being bit? Are you okay with being caught off by surprise?
Yeah, I think, so for me, have you done much blindfolded sex?
I have.
You have? Okay. I have. I had a partner that I was with for a short period of time we did some intense things, but we were like in a relationship and blindfolding was part of that. I think if you approach it right and you just know that person is being incredibly vulnerable and just know that like they are trusting you, like that's a trust situation for me. I would not want to be blindfolded on a first encounter with somebody.
Correct. I was also in a relationship when I did the blindfolding.
Yeah. But I mean, everybody's a little bit different, but I like blindfolding because it brings a complete awareness to all of your fucking senses.
Correct.
And it changes the whole experience.
It heightens all your other senses because you don't have your sight.
Yes. Bathing together. Fucking love it.
Me too.
Love it.
Pre and post?
Yeah. I think one of my fantasies is that I'm with a partner and they are like, no, I'm coming home. And they're like, I got a bathtub ready for you. That fucking my pussy just got wet. Okay.
I've been there, done that. I think
bathtub's ready. I have a glass of sparkling water for you in there. The candles are lit. Go relax. And then like I come out and they like give me a massage and then we just like fuck. How romantic is that? I'm a romantic person.
Yeah, you are.
I really am. Even though I'm fucking hella kinky, I crave romance so bad.
You are. And I'm more of, I like being taken care of. So I like being washed by somebody.
That's hot.
I like being bathed by somebody.
Yes.
I don't know about romance too much for me.
It's too personal.
I like being like taken care of like that.
Yeah.
Because again, I feel like we don't get that in our real life.
Mm-mm.
Like even when we've been in relationships, we're still kind of the dominant one.
Yeah.
So we don't get that.
No. Be careful when you take a bath with your partner if you have a 2-story floor, FYI, because I, just a little story. One time when I was married and my ex-husband and I had a Whirlpool hot tub, like bathtub in our bathroom. He's not a small person, okay? Mm-hmm. And I'm not really a particularly small person. And us to combine 400 pounds probably, almost, plus a shit ton of water, and it leaked through our fucking kitchen and like all over the counter. Well, we had sex and all that. So, there was a lot of motion in the fucking ocean and we ruined our fucking ceiling. So just be careful. That's not the first time I've heard this like story.
Correct. When we were in Mexico, the ceiling started leaking because the people upstairs had done that.
So just be careful. Okay, next one. Bondage, giving and receiving. Do you like to be tied up?
I have only experienced that a limited amount of times. I put maybe.
Okay.
I think that also comes with me with a lot of trust, right? So it'd have to be somebody I've built a relationship with and I trust them and we have like an understanding and things like that.
Yeah. So I have been tied up with like scarves and like I think handcuffs or something before. My favorite is like being tied up and then just my partner is like kind of torturing my body and not allowing me to have orgasm. And yeah, it's the greatest. I can't do anything about it. I have no control. Thank you. And I don't want to be in control.
I think we're the same there. Not having control does something.
Mm-hmm.
But not everybody can do that in the bedroom. Some partners are very not, they're kind of submissive. As soon as you get in there, you're like, oh.
Like you mean speaking from your experience with a male partner?
Yeah.
Oh.
Like, what do you like? Don't ask me that.
Uh-huh. Figure it out. No, I don't know. I kind of like that.
But in the bedroom, ask me that like.
Okay, yeah.
Before we get there, don't get in there and ask me, what do I like?
Yeah.
Like,
do you like your
I would like you to leave now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get that. It's like
the timing was off, obviously.
Yeah, it's like,
for sure.
no.
Okay, and like I mentioned, this next episode, also with Miss Almost Dr. Crystal Barrera, is episode number 124, another girlfriend-style chat. And it was obviously the Boss Bitch After Dark episode with explicit topics. Okay, I think this was probably the very first After Dark episode. So there wasn't like some details in the description because I just wanted to like get you in and see what y'all thought. And apparently you liked it because it was one of the most highly downloaded episodes. So we talked about women being sexually open and explorative and supportive. We talked about oral sex and how do you feel about swallowing and oral sex techniques and tips and the best type of oral sex givers, in our opinion, women who struggle with orgasm. If you've never had orgasm, we go over a lot of things that we both hear often working with women. I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking, okay, you're a personal trainer and a competition coach. What's happening to the podcast? For almost 20 years, I've worked with women, and most of my work has been done in person, physically training clients and seeing bodies and moving, clients through workouts and pole dancing workouts and boot camp workouts and all the things, right? You would think most of my job is personal training and handing people meal plans and training programs. Most of my work is therapy-ish without me being a therapist. But basically me just listening and asking questions and offering insights or perspectives to my clients. So a lot of times within the walls of our studio, it's like a locker room. It's like a girl's locker room with like a ton of your besties. And you could just be like talking about naughty things and like, ooh, we're not going to get in trouble because the principal's not in here. The teacher's not in here, right? And they feel very comfortable and in a safe environment to have these conversations because we cultivate that in our community. It's not like, oh, those girls are raunchy. They talk about oral sex and this and that. Y'all are having sex. Y'all are sucking dick. Okay. We're just talking about it. Okay. We're normalizing it. So enjoy the episode.
We got to live our life too. There's such taboo over women being sexually open and sexually explorative, but there's not that same taboo for men.
Okay. We were just talking about that. Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I think it's just society. And then, here you guys live in a very conservative area.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very conservative area. So that's a thing that you're up against here.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, this probably like more heavily so in the last 6 months, like the partners that I have been playing with. And I use the word play because it's really what it is. Like I'm playing, I'm exploring, I'm having fun, and I'm like learning so much about my body, myself, my pleasures and all those things. And also, the kind of lover that I am.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I'm like, because I have like a strict no sleepover policy.
Correct.
So, when I'm leaving said experience, I'm like contemplating like, okay, what worked? What didn't work? What did I like?
And I get those voice texts.
Yes. And that's why this episode was spawned, because a couple of my besties get the triple X version of all the things that happen. But I've really come to notice that my partners really enjoy that I can communicate what I want done to myself.
Correct.
Because I know what I want.
Most partners will. It's us that have to open up that piece of us, but it really breeds a more enjoyable experience.
How do you feel about swallowing?
It doesn't bother me either way. It's less of a mess.
Correct.
So it depends on what time of day.
Yes.
You got to take that. What do you got to do after?
I might still have some cum in my hair from last night, actually. I just thought about that right now.
So it's less of a mess, and, depending on what you have to do after and like what you got going on, you got to kind of plan that out. Do you want to mess? Do you have time for a shower? Do you have time for all of that?
Right.
All those things matter. The other thing I was going to say is, think of oral sex, because I think one of them was tips, right?
Yes.
Think of oral sex like a lollipop, right? You kind of want to lick it and suck it and, see how that goes.
Up, right?
Yeah. And see how that goes.
Sticky lollipop just sticking to the roof of your mouth.
Yeah.
And you got to be careful with your teeth too.
Correct.
I'm struggling with that with my current partner because he's very well endowed. And so I can't, my mouth is not open quite wide enough. So there's a little bit of struggle there. And my molars get in the way. And I told
braces.
Him,
you have to be careful with braces.
Yeah. I told him, I said, I might have to go get those removed if we continue these festivities. But, I could not swallow for years. I was just like, I couldn't. I just couldn't do it. Yeah. Now I fucking take it like a champ.
Yeah.
But I wanted to share something with you because we haven't talked about, because, you know, I didn't send you a voice message about my experience last night. So I was with my partner last night and he was really tired. Like he had a really long day and was kind of like debating as we were going to like get together, and we're addicted to each other at this point. So I'm like, okay, yeah, like I just need a little something, something. So I went over there and we were just like chilling on the couch and we started like making out and all that fun stuff. And before I know it, like clothes are off and we're in 69. That's like a thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah. And so I'm on top, he's on bottom. And I don't think I've told you this, but I haven't, because I've had at least 15 episodes with this man.
Okay.
Okay. I'm counting in the past month.
Okay.
And I've never orgasmed during oral sex with him.
Yeah, you say that though.
Yeah.
Remember, you've said that
Yeah.
that it's hard for you. That's not hard for me. That's probably the best.
And I feel like it is for most women. And I actually don't typically have an issue with that. But I have found that the reason why I don't with him is because he is so good at giving oral that I just don't want to rush the orgasm.
Oh, I see.
So I'm like edging myself the whole time. I don't know if you do that,
Yeah,
but I
no.
fucking love that. I love to torture myself like that.
Nope. If it's gonna come, let it come.
So we're doing, you know, we're in the act and I'm like, oh fuck, I'm gonna have an orgasm right now. And I'm just like, am I gonna do this? Am I gonna let it happen? You know, because I know he knows he hasn't said anything to me. And I just fucking, it was amazing. Like
It usually is.
I came and then I was obviously going down on him and he came. But I have to tell you this real quick because this is the funny part. And I like sit back and I like swallow, right? And I like wipe my mouth because it was fucking everywhere. And I go to kiss him and he did not want to kiss me.
Oh, really?
He was like, oh no. Like he shook his head like, mm-mm. And I'm like, listen, motherfucker, when you go down on me, you want to come up and kiss me and be like, oh, you know.
It's a thing though. Some people don't like it. Some people do. You just kind of got to see what
How
happens.
I feel about that. Because I have been with somebody before. I don't remember.
Who didn't like that?
No, they have told me prior to, like, I'm going to come in your mouth and I want you to spit it in my mouth.
Oh, I remember that.
And I was like, oh, fuck. Okay. There's a first for everything. And so, like, everybody has different fucking kinks. Is what I'm getting
different
at.
preferences.
And I just am like, let's see what that's like. I'm so curious. But we didn't even have sex last night.
That's a thing, though. Most women only orgasm through oral sex.
Yeah, because of the clitoral stimulation.
Yeah, they cannot orgasm through penetration.
Mhm.
However, if they get an orgasm through oral sex first and then engage in penetration, it will be a more enjoyable experience. Take notes, ladies.
Take notes, ladies. Highly recommended that you do have an orgasm prior to.
I can't do anal sex.
You cannot.
No, thank you.
Yeah, that's probably another topic. Okay,
Yeah.
so oral sex for my tips for the tip. Don't just spend time on the tip
No.
of the penis. There are so many nerve endings all over in their genital region that take time to explore the whole region.
Lick the balls too.
They fucking love that.
Suck them too.
Yeah. Suck the balls lightly. Be careful with your teeth. Don't
Correct.
grab too hard, but listen and ask for like what feels good. Pressure, all the things.
Use your hand if you feel like, you need more control over like speed and like intensity.
Yes.
Because that's like a stopper.
For sure. Exactly. And if you have a gag reflex, that helps with that, right? Because you have a hand that's in the way and you can't go all the way in.
Although I was talking to a girlfriend yesterday and she says that she has a very strong gag reflex. And what she does is she kind of lays over on the edge of the bed with her head kind of tilted down a little bit, like right on the edge of the bed. And then he's on top and then he places his penis in her mouth that way and it bypasses her gag reflex.
Oh, that's fancy.
So that's a tip. If you have a severe gag reflex, you can try that.
That's a tip. That's definitely a tip. I spend a lot of time like inner thigh. Like I don't just, it's the whole, it's not just the penis. It's like the inner thigh, under the ball sack. You know, I love eating ass.
Yes, I do. Because all of that is sensitive, all of that is like the same kind of sensitivity and stimulation for women too, women and, around their anal area and all around, the inner thighs, all of that is very sensitive as well too.
Yeah. I have found that for me as receiving oral sex, the best oral sex givers have been men that I've been with have been exploring the whole area, not just the clit. It's like you're kissing my inner thighs, the whole thing, the whole region. And I'm more of a I enjoy lightly sucking versus like a lot of pressure and tongue. but I'm very, very, very sensitive in that region.
You are. The best oral sex givers, too, in my experience, have been the ones who take their time. Like, that's not like a 2-second situation, right? They're going to commit. They're going to take their time. And women will have orgasm easier if they're getting their clitoris stimulated and their nipples at the same time.
But you have a nipple thing.
I do have a nipple thing, but most women do. Just try it.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I think I like more the visualization of like the fact that he's playing with my tits in general, less about the actual feeling of my nipples.
I think it's both for me. I think I do have a thing for that, though. I'm just going to be honest.
You have a nipple thing.
For male nipples too, though. I enjoy them.
So for women who struggle with orgasm, there's nothing wrong with them.
No.
That's normal.
Orgasm is hard to achieve, but once you start unlocking it, it's like riding a bike. It becomes easier and easier each time.
Mm-hmm. When's the first time you ever orgasmed in your life, if you had to remember?
It was not. It was like later in life.
Like not as like a young girl?
No, it was not. I want to say I didn't orgasm until I started to play with like masturbation and vibrators. I want to say I had a full-on pregnancy and gave birth to a child without ever having an orgasm.
What?
Yes.
Damn.
I know.
Man, I'm just a horny freak or something. I don't know. Because
I couldn't find it.
I think I was probably like 9 or 10.
But you have different anatomy. We've talked about this.
So I've been told. But I think it was like
I have a very closed, tucked away anatomy situation.
We have different looking vulvas.
Yeah, like you have to search for mine.
For the record, vulva is the external vagina. Like we say vagina. Vagina is like the canal.
Correct.
That's like the vaginal canal. Like the vulva, the external, the labia minora, majora, the lips, all that stuff. Right, all that.
Look it up on Google for a picture.
Yes, but I'm very my best friend who also waxes my vagina says I have a very intricate design.
Love her.
She tells me that I have a very intricate pussy design.
Yeah.
I'm like, what does that mean? She doesn't want to elaborate. But I know that mine does not look like all the others.
No, mine's all tucked in and put away. Like you have to look for it.
No, I have groceries.
Yeah, I do not.
I have groceries. And I mean, it's usually like,
but that's why you probably also have multiple orgasms.
I'm sure there's a lot.
Most women who have that are stimulated easier because it's not all tucked away.
Yeah, yeah.
Those of us who have it tucked away, you have to look for it. You have to, get in there.
Open the flower.
Yeah, you have to open the flower, get in there and find it.
And last, but certainly not least, is again one of my top 5 episodes that I've ever recorded. And it was a guest interview with John Romanello. And I have been working with John Romanello for almost this entire 2023, the year of 2023, on communication. He helped me immensely while I was working into the foray of exploring non-monogamy and possibly solo poly and open relationships and discovering what it is that I was interested in and looking for without slapping a label on who I was indefinitely. And I had him on the podcast. It was incredible. He shared a lot of amazing insights on non-monogamy and poly and open relationships and concepts and why it's not accepted and things of that nature. I am going to give you a little bit of a disclaimer here before we let you into this highlight reel, in letting you know that a little bit of a trigger warning. He does mention suicidal ideation and sexual abuse, FYI. So if this is anything that is sensitive for you, you might want to stop here. Otherwise, this episode number 138 is titled Interview with John Romanello on Open Relationships, Polyamory, Kink, Monogamy versus Non-Monogamy. And just to briefly touch on the things we discussed, again, is being less promiscuous in a partnered polyamorous relationship and what that looks like, how connection is the driver for nearly every polyamorous person, and then common misconceptions and sexual health precautions. We dove into a lot of that because he loves to spread awareness about that, which I think is also important. And then strategies for shifting cultural assumptions. Juicy, juicy episode. And you got to go follow him after you listen to it because he does some amazing Q&As on his Instagram stories. And if you're ever curious about anything in this realm, he is very articulate, very thoughtful, and just a great person overall. He's become a really great friend working with him over the past year. And I'm truly blessed to have gone through a journey working with him as my coach because it has opened up a kaleidoscope of possibilities in the realm of communicating and relationships and honestly, everything in between. I mean, he's even helped me with business stuff too, which is fantastic. So, all right, you guys, enjoy this little juicy snippet.
I was super slutty when I was living monogamously. And what I always tell people is I am significantly less promiscuous as a partnered polyamorous person than I was as a single monogamous person.
Why do you think that is?
Because I got somebody at home. You know, when I was a single person in New York City, I still believing myself to be a monogamous person, I would go out and I was just like, I had a there was no way to say this without sounding gross. I don't want to say like a roster, but I had a number. I had consistent lovers, right, who I was seeing regularly. But regularly might mean once every 2 weeks, but there were 20 of them. Yeah. So in a given week, in 7 days, I could sleep with 10 to 12 people. I mean, I could also sleep with 4. Whereas, I just counted this up with my partner yesterday. In 2022, I slept with a total of 12 people.
So I see the contrast. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, if I look at what my year was like when I was 26, so, what would that put us in, like 2008? I assume I slept with anywhere between 60 to 70 people. I have no idea. I don't keep like like a stat sheet, but I happen to know that I slept with 12 people in 2022 because I'm still speaking to all of them. We're still friends. We're still, some of them are still ongoing sexual relationships. And so as a partnered polyamorous person, I'm not going out every night. Like most nights I'm here at home in my house with Amanda, and I like to plan my dates 2 or 3 days out. Like if somebody texts me at 11:30, you up? I'm like, yeah, I'm up, but I'm in the middle of episode 9 of a 10 episode binge, and I gotta watch the last episode before I go to bed.
I feel that,
and I'm not gonna leave my wife.
No,
I'm not gonna she could be going to bed at 9. I'm not gonna wake her. Hey, is it cool if I go fuck this person? I'm not doing that shit. I got a life. Whereas when I was in New York, if I got a you up text at 11:30, I'd be like, yup, come on by.
Makes sense. So got it.
Very different lives. So the misconception is that poly people are all incredibly promiscuous, or that sex is the driver for many non-monogamous people. And it's not. Ultimately, I believe that connection is the driver for nearly every polyamorous person. And some of us, like myself and you, we experience connection through the lens of sexuality first. Whereas people like Amanda experience connection through the lens of emotionality first before it turns into some sort of sexual experience. And because of that, it's simply not true that non-monogamous people are all promiscuous. People in non-monogamous or polyamorous relationships are having sex with more partners than monogamous people in monogamous partnerships, at least if they're not
if they're not cheating.
So sure, like a person in a monogamous partnership might have sex with one person in a year, and to them, me having sex with 12 sounds like a tremendous amount. Whereas a person who believes or who identifies as monogamous and is oriented towards monogamy, but is in a single hoe phase of their life, 12 in a year, 1 a month, that might be very, very low for them. The other piece that dovetails with this is the idea that non-monogamous people or polyamorous people are at greater risk in terms of sexually transmitted infections than monogamous people. And again, that isn't true. If you look at it as a apples to apples comparison, if you in a single year, if you are a single monogamous person and you sleep with 12 people, the likelihood that you might contract something is equal to a polyamorous person doing the same thing. If you're a monogamous person in a partnership and you and your partner aren't sleeping with anyone else, sure, the risk is mitigated, but that's not an apples to apples comparison. So non-monogamous people, because they are open about sleeping with other people, on average have significantly greater standards for sexual health protocols. In my relationships, I get tested very frequently. All of my partners get tested frequently. And it often sounds crazy to monogamous people that we don't use protection, or that rarely. So, again, if anybody wants me to use a condom, I'm happy to use a condom. I also safe sex is a myth, right? Because we can use a condom during sex, during, let's say, P&V intercourse, obviously, just in terms of, just being forthright about my beliefs. I believe that all sex is sex. I don't believe that P&V sex is the only way to have sex. Yeah. Obviously, there are people without V's or without P's having sex. Oral sex is sex, no matter what you're putting in your mouth. But speaking purely from a cis heteromonogamous perspective, there is this belief that if you wear a condom during P&V sex, that you're protecting yourself from STIs. But I always ask straight monogamous people, when was the last time you put a condom on someone before you suck their dick? Right. The answer is fucking never, because you're a good person.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the thing. Like, if you know anything about STIs, you're really not reducing the risk of STI. Like, if you're going to put a dick in your mouth without a condom, your risk is almost equal. I mean, it drops like by 4%. So again, very, very happy to use condoms whenever they want, but a better way to do it is for everyone, whether you are non-monogamous, whether you are monogamous, if you're sleeping with more than one person, get tested regularly. I get tested about every 3 weeks on average. One of my partners she's also pretty promiscuous, and she is every 2 to 3 weeks. She also does she films OnlyFans content. So if she winds up, with a new person who she hasn't had time to vet, they get tested, she gets tested, etc. So we do our best. Obviously, it's the case that, I could sleep with a new person and then get tested 4 days later, and there's still this 10-day window during which, I may have contracted something and it hasn't shown up yet. That is why I get tested every 3 weeks like clockwork. And I'm very upfront with everyone in my life and all of my lovers. We just have a higher than average risk tolerance. But the truth is, we're really not any more at risk from one another than any two monogamous people are.
Got it.
So those are the big misconceptions.
Okay. So the next one's a pretty big one. I had 14 questions because I really wanted to dive deep, but this one for me feels like an important one that I don't want to miss. So how do you think our cultural assumptions about love, sex, and commitment limit our understanding of non-monogamy and polyamory? And what do you think some strategies would be for shifting these assumptions? And I know that's, breaking down a lot of old beliefs.
Sure. Okay. So the first thing is, we have this socialized programming around what it means to love someone romantically. And it comes from movies. And it's this insane idea that if you love someone, you'll never want to sleep with anyone else. And if you want to sleep with someone else, it means you don't love someone. That is not true, even for the most monogamous people. The other thing is about commitment. Monogamy is a type of commitment, but any relationship can be a commitment. So there is no less commitment in a polyamorous partnership. Partnership is partnership, however you do it. So my life is committed to Amanda's. We're going to raise children together. We're going to grow old together. Should she get sick, I will take care of her. Like, that is commitment. She is committed to picking me up from the airport on weekends when I come back from sleeping with my other partner, being with my other partner and going to sex parties. That's commitment. That's loyalty. We are loyal to one another. Sexual exclusivity and loyalty are not synonyms. So parsing these things out and accepting that just because they can mean the same thing, it doesn't mean that when they don't, one of those things is invalidated. So you can be loyal and polyamorous. You can be polyamorous and committed, and you can be polyamorous. You can be non-monogamous. You can love multiple people, and that does not in any way invalidate the experience that monogamous people have when they love just one person for as long as they love that person. So once we begin to parse out the language and assign, both connotative and denotative definitions to what these words can mean based not on, social content, but based on individual context, then it becomes easier to understand. And, we can use all the, well, how many people can you love at the same time? Well, how many friends can you have at the same time?
I use that analogy often, and I kind of get met with like a blank stare. Like, but that's different. I'm like,
it's not different.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
Not different. Like, you have friendships that, like, again, I have friends that I have had in my life since I was 16 years old. I'm now 41. That's 25 fucking years. That's longer than any romantic relationship I have ever had by 5x.
Yeah.
Those are deep relationships. Those guys are my brothers, right? So if I can have 4 of those guys and we're all in a group text together and we all invest in that relationship, in what world is it really hard to believe that, like, once we add sex to the mix, or once we add, this idea of romance to the mix, that aperture has to get so narrow only one person can be visible through that lens? It's not biologically truthful. 2, it is not often emotionally feasible, and 3, it does not follow a logical course. So the thing about it is, it's all orientation, right? I am a queer person. I'm mostly straight, mostly sleep with women, but there's no changing the fact that, like, under the right set of circumstances, Zac Efron, it's going to happen. If he's down, I'm down.
He's your type. I wouldn't have pinned you for Zac. Oh, he's a hottie, but
Well, actually, I'd love to know. What did you think my type is?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to noodle on that a little bit, but he's a hottie.
I have been noodling on it my whole life, and I've settled on Zac.
All right, we'll go with Zac.
He's also just like an everyman type of hottie.
Yes.
He's just like,
and he's got a great, like, he seems to have a great sense of humor.
Great personality, seems fun.
Yeah.
Like a Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah.
Like, great guys. Just, I like hot dudes.
Yeah.
My point is, like, and again, my wife is a fully bisexual woman. There's no amount of loving me that is going to require her to cut herself off from this avenue of sexual and emotional fulfillment. So, what I think that monogamistic programming does is it forces us to see, or it pushes us to view love and relationships through a lens that is very narrow, because from the perspective of media, it's simpler. It's simpler to tell stories of boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back, rather than boy has girl, boy meets another girl, boys and girls get together for a little while, one girl leaves, boy and girl get married, more boys and girls that doesn't make sense. It makes sense to me. I live it.
Yeah.
But it's hard to track.
All right. Now, as we come to a close of this best of episode, I just want you to remember that these episodes are very juicy, like you've obviously listened to. They're full of ideas and perspectives and concepts that I hope you will be open to. Does not necessarily mean you have to agree or disagree or, cast all the judgments you want. I'm just going to be doing me anyways. But you know what I'd be saying? Take what you will and leave what does not serve you. So if there's some fun little things you grasped, rather than just say, well, I can't get on board with that because I don't agree with her perspective on this or that. But maybe my oral sex tips were very helpful. Girlfriend, take that shit. Take it and run. Enjoy. So hopefully this episode brought some fun and ooh and ah and maybe some spice into your life. I always recommend that you listen to these with a partner if you have one. It's always a great way to open up dialogue about uncomfortable conversations. So that way you can get curious with your partner as the episode is playing, maybe on a car ride or in the house without little ears around and you're maybe doing house chores or whatever. And you can have these conversations with your partner in a non-sexual setting, meaning you're not going to bring that shit up right when you're about to roll over and do the deed. You know what I'm saying? There's an appropriate time and place for that stuff. So let me know if you enjoy the After Dark series. We're trying to figure out how much of that we want to sprinkle in for 2024, and we might put it in a Patreon where it lives in a different area for people who are super interested, and we can get a little bit deeper into some topics, and I can have more guests on relative to the After Dark type of concept. So let me know. Find me over on the gram, shoot me a DM, and all the links to everything you're going to need to know about every single episode will be in the description box or in the show notes so you can listen to the entire episodes. All right, y'all, stay sexy, and I'll see you next time.